Welcome to an overview of how we did the scoring for this year's Wildland Fire Resilient Landscapes reporting. We based this on an effort we called the State of the South Atlantic that just finished in 2016. So this is a completely data-driven assessment of the ecosystem conditions of the South Atlantic. And so we used the same methodology to try to report on this year's impacts from prescribed fire. So we grabbed the data where we had actual spatial information about prescribed fires throughout the South Atlantic. So those are shown in red in this picture. Now there's a whole lot of fires going on with partners and things in this region we weren't able to capture, but this was the information we had that actually had shape information where we could calculate indicator results. And so then we took our pine and prairie indicators. So here are three of them shown here: pine and prairie birds, quail, Bachman sparrow, red-cockaded woodpecker, regularly burned habitats with open canopy, and also low road density to get these areas of sort of big patches. We took our indicators, and then for each of the indicators, based on those models, we have a scoring system. So based on the percent that is in good condition. So we calculate that for each of the different indicators within the pine and prairie ecosystem. Then we combine those together to get an overall score of ecosystem conditions. So each indicator is capturing a different component of the system. So for the previous condition, I'm just going to give you an example of how we calculated some of these components. So before we had the impact of prescribed fire, let's say we started in a place that had some bobwhite quail, but that's it on the pine and prairie birds, and it was regularly burned in a low road density area. So predicted after fire, then we have some models of where Bachman sparrow might then show up. So this also depends on some other things about patch size and other components, but places that would have habitat for them provided we had fire. And we still haven't quite figured out exactly the best way to do red-cockaded woodpeckers. They're a little more complicated and depend on things like ground cover. So we did include the possibility this year of getting new red-cockaded woodpeckers. We maintain the regularly burned habitat, so it's still there, and the low road density area doesn't change. And then we predicted without fire. So what if we didn't do anything? What would be the impacts over the next few years? And so in this case, we lose all our pine and prairie birds. We lose our regularly burned habitat indicator. But at the same time, there are still some features it might, a particular area might serve depending on connectivity and the density of roads in the area. So that's how we did these different scenarios. And here are the scores for the predicted impacts of prescribed fire for FY15. So these are those red areas that we showed. We just looked within those. So previous condition, we were at a B. After the impact of these fires, we're at about A- at that point overall. And then the condition without fire in these places basically drops to an F. Few things to keep in mind. This is definitely still a work in progress. The scores don't include some key components of the system that we can't measure very well right now, particularly the lack of ground cover metric. Means that some of these scores are a little overly optimistic. And so this is something we're working on right now. The scores are representing predicted outcome over a few years, so that's why we're modeling them. You know, the birds and the system doesn't immediately respond with some of these major impacts. The second it happens, it takes a few years, but not too many. We're still missing spatial data for a lot of prescribed fires. There's a lot of amazing work going on in this region. We just don't have the spatial data just yet for this year to capture all of it. And these models are regularly being updated and improved. So this was our best shot given the information we have right now, and we're hoping to improve it into the future.